I hear a lot of people talking these days about giving up on the institution of marriage and saying that it's too risky, too many marriages end in divorce. For first marriages in the US at least, it hovers around 42 to 43%, roughly. And because of this, people say, why would I get into an agreement with someone else that would probably end up in me really suffering as a consequence of it ending eventually? And, on the one hand, I can see that there's some validity here, that I think particularly divorce laws and all of that could be improved for sure to make sure that both men and women are fairly treated in divorce court. That's super important. However, I think there's a really big component of this debate that a lot of people are missing, and that is the idea of fear and the risk-taking required to do anything really great in life. So I want to make a couple of comparisons that I think you guys will find interesting. So if you look at how many restaurants fail across the country, it's over 80% don't make it in the first 5 years. If you look at startups for companies in general, 70% of startups fail in the first 2 years, and then over the course of their whole lifetime of the startup, 90% fail. If you look at football players that get into an NFL roster, 70% of football players who get drafted end up not even making it onto an NFL roster, and that's from the top 0.3% of NCAA football players. So that's crazy low numbers. In addition to that, at the top tier universities in the US, over 90% of applicants don't get accepted. So the reason that I'm sharing all these stats with you guys is that I think a lot of the times when we talk about other parts of our lives, we talk about school, sports, dreams, our professional lives, our careers, that we encourage people to take risks. We encourage people to really devote themselves to their dreams and try to pursue something that they think they were really made to do. And we think that it's good to go out on a limb and try to do something really incredible. But then when it comes to marriage, I think we treat it like it's this commonplace kind of default setting for a lot of people, and that because it's a default, it should always work out. And the fact that it doesn't work out a lot of the times, and that the divorce rate is, around 40%, a little bit higher for first marriages, that means it's fundamentally broken and not worth taking a risk on. The problem with this argument, though, is twofold. Number one, if we want to do great things with our life, we have to expect that there's a chance that it doesn't work out. And that sometimes, even when we put in all the effort we can and do everything within our power, sometimes things just don't happen the way we wanted them to. And that's just life. That's life in every capacity. That's our relationships, that's our jobs, that's, whatever it is that you're focused on, there's always a chance that it doesn't work out. And because of that, the second issue with this argument is that we think marriage should be risk-free, that marriage is supposed to feel like this super safe bet, and that if that's not the case, it's not worth it. But it's very interesting because who we choose to marry, or if we choose not to get married, that choice tends to be the most important decision we make in this life. And if it's the most important decision, it's going to naturally carry with it a ton of risk. And we have to go about making that decision with a lot of self-awareness, with a lot of forethought, and really taking our time trying to make the right choice. But then once we do decide who we want to get married to, beyond that, it becomes far less risky than all of these other examples that I just cited. I mean, just starting off, the percentage of marriages that end up staying together over the long term, it's a lot higher than those other stats I cited about startups and restaurants and athletes and top colleges. but also you have a partner who's in it with you. It's not just you alone trying to do something, trying to make something of your life or take a big risk. You have your spouse who's there with you, and you've made these vows to each other that you're going to do the absolute best you can to make this work for life together. So you're not alone, unlike in these other scenarios oftentimes. In addition to that, there's no ceiling for improvement in a marriage. That where in athletics or in your career, for example, so much is outside of your control, and so much is determined by kind of what you were given at birth. So your athletic prowess, or maybe your personality, or your intelligence, or whatever it may be. Those things are outside of your control in addition to a lot of other factors. But within marriage, it really comes down to effort on the part of both spouses. And that is so much more within your control than these other areas of your life. So what I'm really trying to get at here is not that marriage has no risk. It does, but it's supposed to. That anything that's worth doing is not just worth doing well, but it's worth doing well even knowing that there's a risk, that no matter how well you do it, it doesn't work out, that that's just how life works. And marriage is no different in that regard from really trying to do anything else big in our lives. And so if you are somebody who believes in risk-taking as a requirement for making a life worth living, then you can't necessarily say that that's not the case in marriage. I think it's absolutely still the case in marriage, and that it seems like a shift in mentality away from living our lives according to fear of what could happen if we do take a risk, fear of what could happen if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, shifting away from driving our lives by fear and towards driving our lives by a motivation to live well and do what we believe is going to make ourselves better people, other people around us better, and really just society in general. I mean, what makes society better off that we could be doing with our lives? And that's not to say that we shouldn't ever have something that we're running from, that I think the best motivation is having a vision of a life we don't want and we're running from that, and a vision of a life we do want that we're running toward. That those can simultaneously exist and can be very positive as motivating forces moving us in a good direction. But if we're only running from something, then we have no direction. That we are only motivated out of a desire to minimize our chances of disappointment or of things not working out. And that's not really living. At a maximum, that's surviving. But really living and really thriving means you are also pursuing something noble and good in addition to trying to avoid whatever is not noble and not good. But what do you guys think about this? If you have any thoughts on this topic, please feel free to leave a comment on this video. I really love reading all of your ideas about these topics, and really specifically why you think some people are totally giving up on marriage, and how much of a role you think fear and risk aversion plays in that, and maybe how we could make things better and make marriage a more attractive option for more people.